All right. First of all, Michael, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Oh, yes.
Well,
Well, what would a Monday morning be without some technical difficulties to
that
start
would
this thing
be
off,
that
man?
would be really bad, but it's Friday, which is even worse because we're supposed to be relaxing on Friday, looking forward to the weekend.
Yeah, it's totally Friday. I don't know why I just said Monday. That's
It's one of those days. I mean, this is how it started, right?
yeah, yeah. Just man, technology just keeps me humble, man. So
Right.
over and over again with I think all the kinks are worked out and then there's just something else.
Yep.
But yeah, man. Well, thank you so much for being here. Let me I did this a minute ago, but we had to end the live stream abruptly because we had some audio issues. And so everything seems to be working now. So let me just say, I'm really excited to be back with everybody today. I had about a week and a half off because my wife had a baby, and we've been super busy, but it's been awesome and amazing. I appreciate everybody for your prayers and everything through this whole process. Thank you guys so much. It's been amazing. I'm really excited to be back today and to have my guest with me today, Michael Gier. Let me tell you a little bit about Michael. Michael owns and runs a full-service global video and film production company called Gier Productions, LLC, where they produce TV commercials, short films, feature films, documentaries, internet videos, corporate videos, and more. Last year in 2021, Michael released 2 award-winning documentary films, Wounded Heroes and Healing the Heroes of 9/11. Michael's an actor, singer, dancer, made a living as an entertainer for most of his life, starring in Broadway shows across the country. He's a TV and film actor. I could keep going, man, but but ultimately, I'm pumped that you're here. I appreciate you, and particularly a lot of the work that you've done recently. And I'm excited to just talk with you a little bit today about some of these things. A lot of these things, there's a ton of things that I'm interested in talking with you about. But first of all, just thank you so much for your time, and thanks for being here. It's an honor.
Oh, absolutely. I'm glad to be here.
So I mentioned a second ago that, and we'll just use this as a jumping off point. And there's a bunch of things that I'm interested in talking with you about today. But so last year in 2021, you directed and produced 2 documentaries, Wounded Heroes and Healing the Heroes of 9/11. If you would just share sort of a brief synopsis of each of those films, and then I'll ask you some questions about them.
Okay. Well, Wounded Heroes was a documentary I produced by accident. It wasn't planned. We were going to do a feature film with actors. We had the screenplay written, and it was called Wounded Heroes. And I didn't know much about post-traumatic stress, and that was part of the storyline of this movie. So I was interviewing people to learn about post-traumatic stress, and I met a guy in San Diego named Carl, who was a veteran battling serious post-traumatic stress, and he was on 16 different medications, down from 18. And he said it wasn't helping. The side effects were horrific. He said it pushed some of the symptoms down, but it didn't solve the problem. And so I walked away from that meeting and that interview with him realizing I needed to put our other film on hold, and instead we should do a documentary and see if we can find alternative treatments that will actually solve the problem, help anybody battling post-traumatic stress get their lives back. So that led me on a 3-year journey, which became Wounded Heroes, the documentary. We released it in March, and it's available on all of the different platforms, Amazon, iTunes, Google Play, everywhere. And then Fox Nation, the streaming platform for Fox News, they just licensed the film. So that should be up there on their platform. Where are we at? April? I think sometime in May. They wanted to have it up in May. So we're just working out all the little details. But yeah, so that's Wounded Heroes. And then Dan Jarvis was one of the gentlemen I interviewed in Wounded Heroes, who had post-traumatic stress, who was suicidal. He was sick and tired of being sick and tired, as he said. And he found an alternative treatment that really saved his life and gave him his life back. And so he started a nonprofit called 220. And then because I met Dan when I interviewed him, he later asked me, would I be interested in producing a film for his nonprofit called Healing the Heroes of 9/11 that would feature the alternative treatment his nonprofit uses, called TRP, the Trauma Resiliency Protocol. And it's very similar to 2 other things that I already feature in Wounded Heroes. and I love TRP. It's an amazing protocol. And so, yeah, I definitely agreed to do it. The only tricky thing was he called me and said, we need to have this released on September 11th, of last year, the 20th anniversary. I'm like, well, that's great, but there's a problem. That's only 2 months away. It took me 3 years to do Wounded Heroes, and you want me to do this in 2 months?
Wow.
And he said, yeah. And I said, okay, let's give it a shot.
Wow.
So it was a whirlwind 2 months. The film was 63 minutes, which is still a lot, an hour film in 2 months. And we filmed in New York, Florida, Japan, first responders from 9/11, Ground Zero, and also the Pentagon. And they all five of them were battling post-traumatic stress. They talk about what they went through on 9/11 in the film, and then they talk about their battle with post-traumatic stress the last 20 years. Then we put them through TRP in the film. Then afterwards, we interview them again to see if it made a difference. And it made a huge difference in all five of them, showing the world that if people who have experienced 9/11 and battled post-traumatic stress for 20 years, if they can get their lives back, then anybody can. So those were the two films.
Wow. Wow. Yeah. Thank you for sharing. I've seen both films and they're both incredible, incredibly eye opening, and just the content and information. And hearing these stories, both I think for me, it was really powerful getting a chance to kind of you see behind the curtain in a lot of
Mm,
ways of, folks that are really battling with or have battled, with PTS and with this just intense trauma from these experiences that they've gone through. And what was one of the things that really stuck out to me in both of these films is that you're dealing with veterans, you're dealing with first responders, you're dealing with people that are it very often sort of like type A personalities and people that
mm,
they are heroes, they're
yeah.
people that are willing to run into the burning building. They're people that are willing to go on that call, to go on that tour of duty, to to defend their nation. They're people that are like strong,
Yeah.
strong-willed, strong-minded folks that have gone through some really traumatic things. And because as a result of those traumatic experiences, you have these just incredible men and women of strength that are heroic and
Mhm.
valiant people that find themselves in this place mentally and emotionally and psychologically of unable to really function according to who they are, according to their real personality. And it was amazing to listen to some of these stories. For me, it was very, very eye-opening. I'm curious for you. You said that the first film ended up basically being done by accident. Did you, prior to being asked to produce that first film and meeting Carl and
Mhm.
all of that, did you have experience in this area? Did you have a lot of knowledge about PTS and some of these things, or was a lot of this just very new and eye-opening for you as well?
Yeah, it was absolutely all brand new to me. So I do not, I've never been in the military. My dad was in the military, but I don't even know if I was born yet. If I was, I don't remember. I don't think I was born yet. So
Mhm.
Um, so no military in my background, no post-traumatic stress. I actually thought post-traumatic stress was something our military and only our military dealt with. I had no idea that post-traumatic stress is a normal reaction to a traumatic event, and anybody who has a traumatic event can get post-traumatic stress. So that's why both films are really for anybody. It's called Wounded Heroes. I've got a great picture of a soldier on the front, but it was initially produced for veterans and active duty military, but it definitely includes first responders who are also in the film, and then it also their families, and then now anybody can use the techniques and the protocols used in or seen in the film.
Mm, that's incredible. I was definitely very much in the same boat up until, yeah, maybe just about a year or so ago. And I've been learning. I've had the really just amazing opportunity to get to know several men and women recently that work in this area, that work with veterans and that work with first responders and that work with people that are battling that have worked in cumulative stress kind of environments and that have dealt with post traumatic stress and things of that nature. And it is incredibly eye-opening. I was very much in the same place thinking, oh, that's just something that military people go through, and
Mhm.
not recognizing. I mean, I remember years back, just being very, very transparent. I I used to be an Uber driver, and so like just maybe 4 or 5 years ago, I had, this girl, got in my car, and she started telling me about her life and about her past and stuff like that, and she was telling me about how, she has PTSD, or, at the time she had PTSD,
Mhm.
related to, the death of her mother, and,
Mm.
that experience of going through that, and in my mind, just being honest, in my mind, I was thinking, "That's not PTSD, like, that's somebody, like whatever." And I had like this kind of really wrong attitude and wrong perspective about that. And through your films and through conversations that I've had with people more recently, a lot of this is just kind of opening up to me. I think that there's a lot of insensitivity around around these issues. You know what I mean? And I think
Mhm.
that the work that you've done and that so many others are doing to kind of foster this understanding, this greater understanding of the reality of this and what people have gone through and are going through. And again, as you said, not just people that have been in like active combat zones, but police officers, firemen, excuse me, firefighters, first responders, but also anybody else that's gone through some really traumatic
Mhm.
experiences in life, and that switch just goes off in your brain. And as you said, these kinds of things can really be stigmatized in a negative way, but really it's your brain's natural response to, dealing with some of these issues and, stressful situations and traumatic experiences that arise. Would you say that did I
Yeah.
articulate that correctly, or?
Well, yeah, absolutely. So that's your point is it's normal. And so that's
Mhm.
exactly correct. And of course, that was something I had to learn also. But I think a lot of people battling post-traumatic stress are thinking, what's wrong with me? Well, post-traumatic stress is normal, but the brain sometimes doesn't process it out properly. And so then it can become, it can be part of someone's life in a debilitating way. And that's where these alternative treatments come in to help them and let the brain process, what needs to be processed out. And that's one of the things I love about ART, which is featured in Wounded Heroes, RTM, and then also Healing the Heroes 9/11 features TRP. The three of them are very similar. They're a neurological intervention.
Mm,
But what I love about it is, everything is stuck in the amygdala, which the Wounded Heroes talks about. You probably saw this. And what the neurological intervention does is it separates the emotion from the memory and processes everything properly in the brain so that you can
mm,
think about the event without it having this traumatic feeling and emotion and everything else, because it's all been processed properly and processed out. So the memory and the emotion are now separated. It's a very basic definition of what they talk about in the film with doctors and all the experts who explain it much better than me. But the bottom line is, it can be resolved, and people are getting their lives back. Um, Healing the Heroes of 9/11 can be seen at 220.org for free. And
that's
they
awesome.
also provide the treatment TRP at no cost to veterans, first responders, their families. They even do the healthcare now. Doctors and nurses who also battle post-traumatic stress. Our 911 dispatchers battle post-traumatic stress. Our
Mm,
prison guards battle post-traumatic stress. They offer their services for free. I don't know many nonprofits that offer things for free. I always thought with the nonprofit, they're getting all this money, that they're there to earn money, get money, and then give things away. I've been very disappointed to find out, and they do, many do. But I've also found many that charge, for their services. And I'm like, what? So I'm very excited that 220 is one of the organizations that does raise money, but they give away their services to those in need, like I just mentioned, at no cost, which is amazing. And thousands have literally said they're healed. They've got the post-traumatic stress behind them and their lives back. Those battling post-traumatic stress, I've talked to many of them who say, you can't be healed. That's impossible. How dare you even say that? And they get very
mm,
irritated, but sorry, I'm not saying it. I'm telling you what the people who have been healed are saying. They said, I have my life back. I've never felt better in my entire life. Life is worth living again. I mean, all these statements I've heard them say. So I'm not going to call them a liar. They've experienced
Mhm.
it. They're on the other side, and anybody battling post-traumatic stress can be too. Wounded
Yeah.
Heroes, my first film, that can be seen. Well, they can go to woundedheroesdocumentary.com, and there's all kinds of places for it to be seen. But if you're a veteran or first responder, I'll send you a link for free if you contact me through the website.
Wow, that's amazing. Um, yeah, to your point, one of the things that really did stick out to me from both films was people that, had been basically in bondage for so many years, dealing with insomnia, unable to sleep more than a couple hours a night, suicidal thoughts and behaviors, and just all these different kinds of things that stem from post traumatic stress. That everybody in the film was talking really from a place of freedom and from a place
Absolutely.
of I'm not battling with this anymore. And
Yeah.
one of the things, just to make a sort of a correlation here, I 12-step programs and things like that, they've helped so many people. And so I'm not trying to be negative against it in any way, but just one of the problems that I personally have with some of the programs that are out there is this idea that you are always an addict, or you are always, in other words, like there's this idea that you're never really completely free.
Hmm.
And I love the fact that in this situation that everybody was talking from this place of, no, I've experienced healing, and I'm
Hmm.
not battling that anymore. I even heard
Hmm.
one of the gentlemen in the film say that he was 100% better. Like it's a non-issue in his life anymore. And so that's something that's very, very unique, because I feel like there's a lot of things out there, a lot of programs, and a lot of quote unquote treatments where they for whatever reason, and I know there's different reasons for it, but for whatever reason, that there's always kind of this thing hanging over the person's head where it's like, well, this is something that you're going to be battling with on some level. You can get some relief, or you can get, it can get better, it can improve, you can see marginal improvement, but to an extent, it's always going to be something that's stuck in your mind and that you're not really going to ever be fully free from, because of what you've gone through. And the fact that there's men and women that have been through such traumatic experiences sharing their stories, some really incredibly profound stories of trauma and pain, that are now on the other side of that, as you said, and truly walking in freedom. It's
Yeah.
really, it's an amazing thing.
And let me also bring up our first responders, our police officers, who, in the press the last couple of years or whatever, everyone's attacking
Mhm.
them and things. But what they deal with on a daily basis is so
Yeah.
traumatic. The things that they
Yep.
witness, the things that they see, the pressure they're under, not knowing if they're going to come home alive, because there are people out there and they're on the front lines, of that battle against the criminals. And what happens is they get post-traumatic stress because of what they experience, but they don't want to tell a superior officer about it. They don't want to have their job taken away. They don't want to have their gun taken away. So they'll try to suppress it, or they'll self-medicate with alcohol. And I talked to a lot of them, some of them in the film, who were barely hanging on. They weren't sleeping at night. They're sleeping, drinking
Mhm.
themselves to sleep every night. And then they're waking up really they're not at 100%. Some of them said I was working at 25, 30%. So
Yeah.
when they get into a very stressful situation, it's probably they're going to make mistakes. They're going to do some of the stupid things we've seen officers do that I think all of us should agree should never have
Mhm.
happened.
Sure.
And but they're at a place where they're not operating at 100%. They're not where they should be because of the post-traumatic stress they're battling. And that's what's great about, again, these alternative treatments like Dan Jarvis's
Yeah.
22 Zeros TRP. It gives them their lives back. And what TRP also does, what they're doing through 22 Zero, is peer-to-peer support. They're teaching officers to learn the protocol TRP.
Mhm.
They then can do it on fellow officers. Firefighters can do it with fellow firefighters. They don't have to tell HR. They don't have to worry about losing a job. They can go to their buddy who's been trained and say, I'm dealing with this. I want to go through it through TRP.
Yeah.
Their buddy who's already been has their life back, no longer has post-traumatic stress because they went through TRP. They're now trained. They can now help their friend in the department. and then all of a sudden they're all working at 100%, and then that's better for safety for the community. It's better safety for them. It's better
Absolutely.
for the departments who don't have to worry about losing officers and all that training and experience and starting over with a rookie. There are so many benefits if we can get post-traumatic stress under control in the police departments, the fire departments, the prisons, 911 dispatchers, everywhere. So TRP and being able to do peer-to-peer support is huge in helping resolve that problem.
Mm. I'm really glad you brought that up because I think that that's such a key issue from folks that I've talked to that that work in these fields. So if you're a police officer, you're a first responder, or somebody like that, where you are regularly exposed to traumatic experiences, you're seeing difficult things. You're seeing death, you're seeing different things happening to you. As a police officer, even doing routine traffic stops, things like that, where you
Yeah,
never know, does this person have a gun? Does this person have a weapon? Are they going to do something that's going to hurt me? Or, something like that. And when those things start to eat away at their minds, traditionally it's been so difficult for them to have these conversations because of the fear of, I might lose my job, or I might have to get put on leave, or I might get sat down, or they might put me on a desk, or whatever. And just that fear of not being able to fully express what's going on in your mind and getting those things out. So just kind of acting like everything's okay. And then I've even talked to some folks that have said, and then on the other side too, it's like they don't want to go home and talk to their family about it either,
right.
because they want to protect their family from what they're going
Hmm.
through. And so they feel like they need to be strong and kind of put on this front. And I don't say that in a negative way. I mean, what I mean is, in order to protect their job, to protect their family, to protect their income, they end up basically sacrificing their mental health because they're not able to have these conversations. And so the fact that these protocols are being instituted to where these men and women that are on the front lines and in these difficult situations where they're here to protect and defend
Yeah,
us, society, and people, it's like, the fact that these protocols are being put into place where there's more freedom to open up and to, get healing and to get, to get freedom and things like that. It's such a game changer.
yeah. Well, just, the point of the films is just to get people whole again and let them
Yeah.
get their lives back and to realize it is possible. And, it's helped a lot of people, both films have. And, that was my goal. And so I'm just blessed and excited to have been part of it.
Yeah. What would you say, and this might be something that's already come up, but what would you say was maybe the most shocking or surprising or eye-opening thing that you discovered throughout this journey, that you were just completely unaware of before you started?
Well, boy, I mean, there's so much I've learned, starting from knowing nothing to now I feel like I'm an expert just because I've interviewed so many doctors and people who've experienced post-traumatic stress themselves. And I think the most exciting thing, because I didn't know if was anything that would help post-traumatic stress other than the medications that really weren't helping. And
Mm,
so I think the most
yeah,
exciting thing for me was to find alternative treatments that do solve the problem, that do give people their lives back. And, there are times I interviewed everybody myself. I was on camera interviewing them. We kind of did this like a 60-minute interview type of thing. It was kind of following my journey to find alternative treatments in Wounded Heroes. And, just hearing their stories about where they were before and then seeing their tears of joy because they now have their lives back, that sometimes I'm, choking up on camera, trying to hold my tears back.
yeah,
That was, I just think,
yeah,
really impactful. When you see somebody's life that was so damaged because of a traumatic event, get their lives back. And as you said, the freedom, the relief, being able to sleep through the night, have relationships again. And I had a firefighter police officer. He was a veteran, not a firefighter police officer. He's a veteran and a firefighter. He said, I experienced hell at war. And he goes, and I experienced hell as a firefighter. And I think he did
mm,
20 years in both. He had a whole long
wow,
career of service.
wow,
And, he said, you have no idea what, people we experience as veterans and as firefighters. And he had really bad post-traumatic stress. But he said, I'm happier today than I've ever been in my entire life. And I'll never forget that, because even before he went into the military, He probably thought he had a good, happy life. But today, after all that trauma, 40 years or so, and retired, but because of an alternative treatment, he got his life back. He can now say he's happier than he's ever been. I mean, that's an amazing thing. So I think that was the most exciting thing for me. And I can't think of the word, but the fact that they were able to find solutions and it was that beneficial in their lives, that was my hope. And it was exciting to actually find those things and then sit in front of people who could give me the before and the after. So that's very exciting.
That's amazing. That's amazing. Let me just bring this up because we've been using the terminology PTS, or post traumatic stress, without the D on the end. And so some people might be wondering, like, how come you're not calling it PTSD? How come you're calling it PTS or whatever? I know that there's some controversy over whether or not to call this a disorder, and I'm pretty sure I know where you stand on this from watching the films and everything. But one of the things that I think you did a really, really just great job of in the films was, as you were interviewing people, just really highlighting them and not really doing a whole lot of injecting your own opinions and things like that, into it. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah.
And so, but I'm pretty sure I know where you stand on this. But post-traumatic stress, is it a disorder? Is it an illness, or is it an injury? What is from your findings and from your experience and talking with all these folks and dealing with these alternative treatments and things like that? What's your thoughts on that?
Well, I'm not an expert, obviously, but I'll give you my
Sure.
opinion based on everything, talking to everybody. In the beginning, I was calling it post-traumatic stress disorder, and I did a TV interview, and I got an email from a veteran, just let me have it. I'm not disordered. I don't appreciate you going on TV. You're not even a veteran. You have no idea what I've been through or what I'm going through, and you're going to sit there on TV and say, I'm disordered. How dare you? And I was like, well, I thought that's what it was.
Yeah.
Everybody calls it post-traumatic stress disorder. Isn't it a disorder? So, but that made me start researching it. So I actually emailed the guy back and said, well, thanks for letting me know, because I had no idea, and I'm going to research it. And then, we'll go from there. So then we made the decision for the film to call it post-traumatic stress. So some call it an injury because, like any injury, and I agree with that, it's also an injury. It can be healed. If you break your arm, you go see a doctor, you get the help you need, you get your cast if you need it, you take some time to recover, and you heal up. And I had a great thing about doing these films is I've met some amazing people of all types and people, but getting to meet all these top generals in the country have been pretty exciting as well. But one of the generals I met, Don Bolduc, I think he's running for Congress or Senate right now. But that he was saying, when you break your arm, people's like, oh, how can I help you? Flowers and everything else. But when you say, oh, I've got post-traumatic stress, they're like, ooh. It's almost like saying you have leprosy. Yeah. Oh, and then they go and he acted this out. He went and he hid behind a door and stuck his head out. He has post-traumatic stress, disorder. And he said, it's an injury. He goes, we all have things that we need help with. It's an injury. Post-traumatic stress, it can get better, So anyway, I call it post-traumatic stress. Others call it post-traumatic stress injury. But there is a big push to get the disorder, the D, off. And so I just happen to agree with taking it off. And so I do.
Now, why do you think, other than, okay, so in that example of that veteran basically contacting you and letting you have it because you're calling me disordered, you're saying that I have a disorder. Why do you think, besides that, why do you think it's so important, that terminology? So in other words, to not call something a disorder if it's truly not a disorder, and is there a reason why, in your opinion, there's a certain push to kind of keep the disorder connected to post-traumatic stress? Do you get what I'm asking? So is there a push to keep it connected to there with some kind of ulterior motive? And why do you think it's so important, or why do you think the terminology itself matters?
Well, I think just the word disorder makes it sound like there's something wrong with the person. And again, it being a normal reaction. And, maybe it can get so difficult in their lives that it can become a problem in their life. But because it can be healed, some say that the disorder portion there is there because, the drug companies make a lot of money off of post-traumatic stress, and they prescribe a lot of medications. As I said, Carl in San Diego was on 16, down from 18 prescription medications. And I've heard veteran after veteran say they'll walk into the VA or any other psychiatrist, and in a 10-15 minute interview, they go, okay, you got post-traumatic stress. Let me give you these prescriptions. They walk out with a handful of prescriptions. And, and psychiatrists, I'm not necessarily blaming them. That's what they've been trained to do. They look at symptoms, and then their natural training is, okay, for those symptoms, you go and you prescribe these medications. And that all comes from the drug companies in their training and making sure, and there may be good motives behind it. They're having a problem. I'm going to write a prescription and help. That's what they're trained to do. But, there's also a lot of money being made by those prescriptions being written. And so as one person said in my film, the drug companies are making a ridiculous amount of money, and they want there to be a disorder technically, because if there's not, they don't make money. Their job is to produce illnesses, not produce illnesses, make sure that they have prescriptions to take care of any illnesses that come up. And so I don't know, maybe they want it to be a disorder for that reason. I mean, I don't know. I've heard that from others, but I'm speculating based on what others have said.
Sure. Yeah, one of the things that came up, particularly in the Wounded Heroes film, over and over again, was this idea of, you're going in to get evaluated because you're dealing with depression, you're dealing with anxiety, you're dealing with maybe suicidal thoughts and these things. And so then they prescribe you medication, and you look at the side effects, the potential side effects of the medication, and it's anxiety, depression, increased suicidal thoughts and tendencies and things like that. And it's like, this is what I'm going to treat. And yet I'm taking a medication that, this, what do you call it? A psychotic, that's not the right word. What's the word of them? Anyway, a lot of these medications that are, again, basically the potential of causing the same problems that they're supposed to be treating.
Making it worse.
Yeah, exactly. One of the things, man, that really was eye-opening to me. There was a gentleman, there was a veteran from I guess it was from the Vietnam War in the film. Forgive me if I'm getting some of the details wrong, but he talked about being a POW for, I think it was 7.5 years.
Oh yeah,
and there being 600 plus soldiers that were prisoners of war for all of these years. And throughout that whole time, he said, we were in very horrific circumstances, being beaten and being brutalized and all of this for years. And not a single one of us committed suicide. And yet after that experience, we came home, and, I think we have to look at more factors than just the medication, but the idea that, hundreds of people coming out of this situation, getting home and being over medicated in many circumstances. And then, from that point on going forward, many of them started to, take their own lives. And,
it's very sad.
Yeah,
that was interesting. I thought that was fascinating as well. And there's one other thing a doctor said in the film. If I can remember it. There was the Department of Defense had an increase in the amount of prescriptions they're prescribing, and the amount of suicides went up in correlation with the amount of prescriptions being increased. I'm not paraphrasing it very poorly. The film that the doctor actually talks about it. He's actually a colonel, a retired colonel, and he's also a doctor. But he talks about the statistic much better than I just did. But yeah, those facts are just fascinating. Again, it makes you wonder. Again, I'm not the expert, but it does make you want to stop and think. And if more suicides are happening as more prescriptions are taking place, that makes you wonder if those in POWs are surviving through hell day after day, and yet when they come home and are given prescription medications, that could contribute to a part of the reason as to why they decide to take their lives. I mean, that's something to think about.
Yeah, absolutely. Man, it's intense.
But the good news is there's hope without medication. And that's the other thing. Everybody in my film who were on lots of medications, and they talk about the serious side effects, and the film wasn't anti-medication. I just happened to interview people. They just talked about the prescriptions they happened to be given and how it destroyed their lives. It wasn't my agenda. I wasn't looking for that. This is just everywhere I went. This is what I heard veterans and first responders tell me.
Yeah.
So I had to tell their story. So that's why the film has that. But that wasn't something I meant to have happen. Wasn't meant as an anti-drug, because there are medications we all need. I'm on medications, for high blood pressure, whatever. So there are medications we need. So I'm not anti-drug, but I am antipsychotic, with black labeled medications that have very serious side effects. If they do more harm than good, I think those should be seriously reconsidered before a patient chooses to take it. And knowing what you're taking,
Yeah.
and not just taking it because a doctor prescribes it, but knowing what you're taking and what the potential side effects are, that's our responsibility before we take it. And many people don't realize that. So we talk about that in Wounded Heroes as well.
I think you were really fair, particularly in the Wounded Heroes documentary about discussing that, and you along with others said, I mean, there's definitely people that benefit from taking certain types of medication and things like that. I think what was being one of the things kind of being combated against, and I know that that wasn't the goal of the film, but one of the things again that came out from these different conversations was the idea of being over medicated and being
Yeah,
medicated to the point with drugs that are actually negatively affecting you. They're not allowing you to be
exactly.
present in your life. And that there are other options there. And I love
Hmm.
that you did discuss those resources for being able to go online and to research different medications, and how sometimes even like the doctors, either they don't know or they're not paying attention or whatever it is, but where two drugs will be prescribed to the same person that counteract with each other, and that produce some really negative side effects as well and things like that. So just kind of the idea of empowering people to
Yeah.
take some things into their hands, and to
Hmm.
say, you know what, let me find out about this. Not to say that I'm more knowledgeable than the doctors or whatever, but like ultimately
No.
at the end of the day, this is my life, this is my mental health. And so if there's another way, if there's a better way, to do this and to go forward and to actually experience real healing and real freedom, then there are those options out there for that.
Yeah, absolutely.
So,
And what I didn't get to finish saying, because I lost my train of thought, was the people I interviewed in the film. All of them are off their medications or down to just one or two, and that's huge. To be on so
mm,
many medications and then it really having a negative impact on their lives, and then now to be off of it, be healed of post-traumatic stress, and to have their lives back. That's exciting to see for those currently battling post-traumatic stress, that they too can get on the other side. There is hope.
yeah. Yeah, and let me just say as a disclaimer, like none of this is medical advice, right? And this is
Exactly.
like the idea is that for anybody that does find themselves in that kind of a situation, this is something that you mentioned in the film as well. There's a healthy way, in the care of doctors to kind of
Absolutely.
taper back on medications. And
Yeah.
it's not in any way advocating for like stop taking your meds, stop taking your just like go cold like not in any way trying to put that out there, right?
Yeah, good point. I'm glad you
But
clarified that. Yeah,
just
no,
be
absolutely not.
being safe. And
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
So what would you say is something, this might be my last question on this, and we can kind of maybe shift gears and talk about some other stuff going on in your life too. But what was something that you would say that you learned throughout this process that you can now impart to others, that can just like help all of us maybe be more mindful, more empathetic, more aware of people in our lives that may have gone through some traumatic experiences and things like that? Just what's maybe one or two things that you've learned throughout this process that's helped you to see things a little bit more clearly, that maybe you can just speak into for a moment, that could help all of us to just have a better handle, whether it's on the way that we interact with folks that have gone through traumatic experiences, or again just becoming more mindful about some of these things that are going on in society.
Well, I think it's kind of a tough question, but I think one is not to be so quick to judge, you know, those who have experienced something traumatic in their lives and are battling lots of different things because of that traumatic event. I think it's so easy for us to
Mhm.
judge, avoid. There are people who are just really hurting, inside, and they try to cover it up and hide it with so many other things,
Yeah.
whether it's getting into a cave and not communicating with their loved ones, whether it's starting to drink too much, there's just a lot of different things that can take place. And, loved ones don't even know what to do. They try to reach out. The person doesn't want to have the help. So, I've encouraged family members to watch the films, Wounded Heroes and Healing the Heroes of 9/11, just to learn themselves what their loved one may be going through. Learn some of the alternative treatments so that they can, make a suggestion after they maybe check it out themselves, make a suggestion to their loved one, but I think all of us just need to realize there's a lot of hurting people and not be so quick to judge, including our police officers. I'm so sick of, people out there, the press and everybody else, vilifying our police officers. They should be ashamed of themselves. I agree there are police officers, a very, very minority, that have made huge mistakes and done stupid things that should never have happened. We all agree with that. But we also shouldn't then throw them all into the same bucket and villainize them. And we also need to realize that a lot of them are under so much pressure. That's what's causing them to make their stupid mistakes and stupid choices that they should have known better. But if they can get their post-traumatic stress taken care of, then hopefully those stupid decisions will not happen in the future. But anyway, I just think there's a lot more love and grace that needs to be given to all of our military first responders. And we need to encourage them, help them, not villainize them.
Love that. Love that so much. Is it okay if we shift gears a little bit?
Sure.
A little bit. So probably a question you've heard over and over again. This might be sound in my head anyway. It sounds like a cliche kind of a question, but what's it like, or what's it been like being a Christian in the entertainment and film industry? Too broad?
I don't know. Well, I'm just trying to think. I don't know if it's really affected me too much. So I remember I did a TV show. The biggest thing I noticed was I did a TV show years ago. It was a show called The Middleman. And I was at one of the studios. I forget where we filmed it. One of the studios in Hollywood. And it was a big budget thing. I mean, they had over 100 people on the crew. It was this massive show. And, and my scenes were with the two stars, the two lead actors. And then we were on break. And, so the two stars and some of the other actors and some people were just hanging around. And I'm hanging out with the group, talking to everybody. But somewhere politics got brought into it, and faith. And they just started going off on Christians and all kinds of stuff. And I'm standing there going, so I wasn't going to get into the battle because it's one of those things where there's really no point. So what I try to do as a Christian myself is I live my life. I'm honest. I'm outgoing. I'm friendly. I say hello to everybody. I just try to be myself, but be a positive, good example. And there are opportunities where I'm able to talk to somebody and share my faith. And I have I'm very willing to walk through any door that opens. And, and when I'm on set, if there's something I see, I'll pray for somebody, and pray for a situation, but I'm not there to battle people. If they want to talk bad about Christians or Republicans or politics or liberals or, anybody, even Democrats, I'm like, I'm not interested. I'm there to just, do my job as an actor and, be a positive example. And so that's what I try to do. So I've been able to, be able to reach out and talk to many different people, because of that. And my film sets, when I produce films, I can't tell you how many times I've heard this, because it's a tough business. And film sets are run like the military. There's a hierarchy all the way down, to the bottom, and people have the utmost respect. But sometimes it can be a very rough film set, or TV set where people are not nice. And every production I've produced, I cannot tell you how many people came up to me afterwards and said, I've never had so much fun on a film set. I've never had so much fun doing what we just did. And I'm like, well, we're in Hollywood living our dreams. We're all kids in a candy store. We should be having fun, But I work with a lot of non-Christians, and actually mostly non-Christians. I don't even really ask who is or isn't Christian. Sure. But, so to hear those kind of things as an example, I think that's also a way for me to be an example as a Christian who's producing. It's my company, I'm directing, and then to have it be such a positive influence and they actually had a good time is a good witness, So that's all my way of trying to shine a light as God wants us to do in my part of the world where he has me.
Yeah. No, I think that's a very real thing. Like, you being you being yourself. Whether we're talking about this kind of situation or whatever kind of job anybody has, being yourself and not necessarily, as you said, like looking for the fights or looking for, the way to become argumentative about faith and, why other people are wrong and you're right and all that kind of, garbage really so
Yeah.
often. And but I mean, but living your life, and people do see that you're different, and people do, to your point, like noticing that even the atmosphere itself is different, on your set because of the attitude that you bring to it, the work ethic that you bring to it. And I think that that's an important aspect of being kingdom minded. It's approaching life, it's approaching your work and what God has called you to do, from a place of excellence. And I think that we can do that in a way that does demonstrate God, that does demonstrate his goodness and his love, the way that we serve people. And I think that's a really, really good perspective, focusing on,
Yeah.
how can I best serve and love the people that are in front of me with what I'm, called to do. And I think that that's really cool.
And I think, as you just said, the people in front of me, that includes everybody, including the ones whose lifestyles I may not agree with. Again,
Mhm.
it's another
Absolutely.
thing where Christians can be so judgmental. Human beings, I guess, can be so judgmental, including Christians. And I do believe that every walk of life, there are people who are hurting. There are people who have had things happen in their past, and they're acting out. There's a lot of different reasons why all of us are who we are today and do the things and the choices we make today. But it all usually stems by something deeper within that person, and they just
Mhm.
need to be loved. And so I've met some pretty, even out on the street. My wife and I will go into Hollywood. We'll meet some pretty strange people, but I don't judge them. I'll talk to them. I'll love them. I'll pray for them. And I think too many Christians are spending so much time judging and walking away from that. I don't really think God calls us to that. At least pray for them. And if you have an opportunity, smile, give them a handshake, treat them like a human
Yeah.
being, treat them with the love that Jesus does have for them, because they may
Mhm.
feel unloved inside. You may not know. They may they may hate themselves inside. And to have someone as unusual as they may look, love them, that could be such a
Mhm.
witness. So
Yeah.
I think that's really important. Not that you're saying the lifestyle choice is okay, but you should still love the person. That's, I guess, my difference.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that's really important. You can dignify the person without, just because you're dignifying the person and you're honoring the people that are in front of you doesn't mean that you're, condoning their lifestyle or whatever it is that they're doing or whatever. I think that Jesus demonstrated that to us over and over
Absolutely.
again. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Being down in real life with people and not becoming scandalized by, their life choices and things like that. At the same time, of course, not being affected personally by it, and always, coming from the standpoint of, if I'm going to speak into your life, I'm going to call you higher. I'm going to call you, into your purpose, into your destiny. I'm going to call you to a higher standard, but I'm not judging you, and I'm not going to refuse to have interaction with you because you're doing things that I disagree with.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I don't ever think we should condone it, but what you just said is exactly right.
Yeah. Have you ever had to, like, turn down any roles or work or anything like that just on the basis of your own convictions? Has that ever come up?
Yeah, it has. Recently, I turned down a couple of auditions because of that. But at the same time, I usually play a lot of bad guys, and I love playing bad guys.
I
And I am
noticed that.
I'm an actor. So I
Yeah.
don't have a problem acting a role that's not myself, because it's not me. When I'm living my life as Michael Gier, I answer to God. As an actor in the real world, there are bad people. who do bad things. And I don't mind portraying those people, not if it's going to glorify that bad lifestyle. I won't
Mm,
do that because I don't want to be part of something that's putting out, it's great to have, a wife and 3 girlfriends. There's usually a consequence to that. So I don't mind playing that guy who loses everything because of his bad choices. That I don't mind playing, even though he's a crappy character.
sure.
But if it shows that crappy character, man, he had a wife, he had 3 kids, he had it all. If it did that, I wouldn't portray that character because that's a lie.
I
I
see.
don't know anybody who can live that lifestyle and actually end up okay. It's like I was watching. I've seen Jay Leno around Hollywood here. Probably I've met him six times or so. He's everywhere. I just saw him a couple of weeks ago again. But I saw an interview with him recently, and he was talking about the whole Will Smith slap on the Academy Awards and all that.
Uh-huh.
And then he said, I think there's just a bigger issue going on. And then all of a sudden he said, he goes, they have that whole open relationship thing. And he goes, I've never seen that go well. And so supposedly, they both have they're married, but they have an open relationship. They can
Hmm.
go out and have sex with whoever they want. And so Jay was just basically saying that's never worked out. So it's the
Right.
same thing. I would play a role where I have an open relationship if the role shows the disaster it always becomes if you choose that. But I
Yeah.
would never do that role if it showed, man, they get to be married
Yeah.
and they get to have sex with whoever they want. That
Yeah.
as a good thing, that I would not do. So that's how I draw
Yeah.
the line. But I
Yeah.
played some awful characters. Serial killer. I played an uncle who was a molester to his 2 children.
Mm,
I'm sorry, nephews. That was for America's Most Wanted. So we helped fight a criminal.
okay.
But it was a very creepy role. My sister couldn't even watch it. She said I freaked her out. My wife, she said she watched it. She goes, it wasn't you. You were such a disgusting, weird character. She goes, it was hard to watch, but I like playing those because it's not me, but I love it because it helped to catch a bad guy.
Yeah.
There's a lot of reasons why, I'll take roles.
No, that makes a ton of sense. That's I appreciate that explanation. Yeah, I remember seeing a clip of you in a prison cell in like an orange jumpsuit, and I'm guessing that you were some kind of a serial killer or something like that, and you just
He
had
was
this
disgusting. Yeah. It
real
was really
just
character.
sinister kind of
Yeah.
look on your face, and just kind of getting into that role. Do you enjoy doing like the roles where you're playing someone who's bad? Do you have
Yeah.
a preference whether it's good or bad, or?
I have more fun playing the bad characters. I've played a
Mhm.
lot of detectives, and they're just boring. It's just me. I recently did the movie just came out. It's called Lord of the Streets, and I play a prison warden, and that was fun. I mean, I enjoyed playing the prison warden because we were in a prison. We had all these prisoners, and I'm the guy in charge out in the yard talking to everybody, and that was fun. But it's more fun to play the wacko characters. Yeah, that guy in the prison suit, he was on death row. He was actually just hours away from being taken and his life taken from him because of his
Mm,
crimes. But he was he was a horrific murderer, killer, and of young children. So, but he was, and
wow.
as you saw, the character is just a little. And it wasn't until I got on set that I figured out that character. I had the lines memorized, and for some reason, I got behind the bars. And all of a sudden, it was just there. And I'd never been a character like that before, but I sure
Yeah.
had fun with him. It was a fun character to create.
Yeah, I could imagine it'd be interesting to get into the role, to try to kind of get into the mindset of someone who is just so vastly different than who you are as a person, and
Hmm.
just kind of really explore those things in terms of acting, and figuring out somebody's personality, and acting that out when it's, again, like when it's somebody. So if you're playing a detective, or you're playing somebody who's like a good dude, like a good father, good family
Hmm.
situation, like of course there's acting involved there, but
Hmm.
is this part of it for you? Like maybe there's not as much, it's not as much of a stretch, like you can kind of be yourself to an extent in that role, and you get into of course you still got to develop the personality and stuff like that, but
Yeah.
you're kind of a little bit more, it's a little bit more close to reality, whereas if you're going all the way out there and trying to get into the mind of some sinister human being, and it just seems like this is like I'm acting, like I'm I'm
Yeah.
really outside of my comfort zone, and I'm really outside of what's normal for me. Do you think, is that
Well,
part of the
here's
process,
what's
or?
Interesting. It's for me, it's the opposite, and I'm still learning as an actor. You know, acting. I think you're always learning and trying to get better. There are sometimes I watch myself and I'm like, ugh, I didn't like it. There are other times I'm like, okay, you know, I like that character. But for me, it's harder for me to play the regular guy when I just have to play a guy who's like
Yeah.
Michael, whether I'm a detective, a father. You know, I don't know why those are harder for me to play because the others, I am putting on a character. So it's easier for me as an actor to put on a character and get in front of the camera than it is to just pretty much be me in front of the camera. So I struggle when I have to just be me. It still looks fine on camera. I know me, how I'm feeling, because I have a hard time. I'm like, I don't have a character. You know, it's easier
Yeah.
for me as an actor to be
Yeah.
the character. When I'm just me, it's like I don't know how to act because I'm not the character. And so again, I'm still learning. That's something I have to learn to deal with so that I can get on camera and be myself. And it still works. Like I said, I still play roles like that all the time. They cast me, so I must be doing something right. But
Yeah.
I know how I feel. It's harder for me to do those roles.
Yeah. Yeah. I think about people like who's a good example? Um, Somebody like maybe like Owen Wilson or Matthew McConaughey or somebody like that who is pretty much they're the same person in all the roles that they do. Like
Yeah,
they're really incredibly good at
yeah,
being themselves
yeah,
and fitting into that role, you know what I mean? And making
yeah,
that role their own, but really based very much on, I think anyway, this is my perspective as an outsider, but like I think getting into that role very much based on their personality and bringing a lot of their own character and personality into those roles in many
yeah.
situations. I feel like for me, and again, I have like no experience here, but I feel like for me, like I resonate a lot with what you're saying because I feel like if I was trying to play a character who was too close to me, I'd be so in my head about it that I'd be like overacting, like over delivering on something that's not really that serious or that dramatic because I'd be trying to make a character happen or something like that when it's not maybe really as necessary. So I
Yeah.
feel like that makes a lot of sense what you're saying.
Well, it's
Yeah.
funny because people don't realize, you know, how hard it is to be an actor, especially on film. The good actors make it look so easy, but it
Yeah.
takes a lot of training for most people to make it look that easy. Because the key to acting is not acting, you know. And then I came from musical theater. I made a living my entire life, you know, doing all these big musicals and Broadway shows, not on Broadway, but all over the country, you know, Oklahoma, um, and, anything goes, you know, just show after show after
Yeah.
show, singing, dancing, and acting, starring in all these amazing shows, and then going from really big, where on stage I have to talk to the person, you know, 5,000 people, and the person in the back row. I have to do things big for them to see me.
Sure.
On film, television, on camera, everything is you don't act. It's all, you know, on stage. If I wanted to look down, I would be like, you know, bam, look down so the audience sees the look. On film, it's just an eyeball thing. It's just,
Yeah.
you
True.
know, it's so subtle. And so
Yeah.
learning, I sucked when I first came to LA as a TV film actor because I was doing big. And I had a great acting coach, Brad Heller, who, after, you know, I think 2 or 3 years, I finally got to say a line on television. It was a soap opera called Sunset Beach, I think it was. And I just walked in and served papers to somebody, you know, and then eventually I just learned how to just actually be real in front of
Yeah.
the camera. That's what TV film actors, but it took, and I still have to really make sure I'm keeping it real, you know, because it's easy to
Yeah.
overact on, which we see it all the time with bad actors on, you know, different TV shows and things, which is irritating, but it's like they're
Sure.
acting. You need to keep it so real, so subtle. Those are the amazing actors.
Yeah. Um, has there been a like a favorite role that you've played, or is there something along the lines that you can point to that say like you just really really enjoyed doing that, or maybe it was a character that you got into or something like that?
I wouldn't say there's one. It was just any of those fun characters that just weren't me,
Yeah,
that were really, you know,
yeah,
the crazy people. It
yeah,
sounds awful, but it's, you know, the crazy people with the crazy lifestyles that are they're just, I don't know. They're just fun to play
yeah,
for some reason.
yeah. No, I can imagine. I can
Well,
imagine.
I met with my agents yesterday. It was so funny, you know, in LA. I went down to meet my two agents again and, you know, see them. And they're like, "You're such a nice guy, Michael. You know, you're so friendly. And she goes, it's so funny that you're always getting roles for playing the bad guy when you're
Mhm.
so not the bad guy. And I think that's why I like playing the bad guy, because that's not me. I'm the happy-go-lucky guy. I've never been in a fight in my life. It's like, and yet
Yeah.
I play the guy who, will come right at you with those evil eyes, like I'm going to take you out. And for some reason I get cast that way, and they're fun to play, but that's not me.
Yeah, if you were a bad guy in real life and then playing a bad guy in films, like, that would probably be problematic, you know what I mean?
Yeah, maybe
It'd
everyone's
probably
afraid of
be
you on
like,
set.
yeah. It's like, yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. He's a lot like that in real life. Oh, okay, well,
Yeah,
maybe we should.
stay clear.
Yeah. Has there been anybody, and not to like, I don't know, not to like name drop or whatever, but have you is there anyone that you were just like particularly excited that you've had a chance to work with, either an actor or entertainer, that you had a chance to either, work alongside of or something like that, and one of the projects that you've been on that was just particularly, exciting for you?
Well, I get starstruck, like everybody. So it's always being fun to be on set with people I
Yeah.
respect. I did a movie with Sir Ben Kingsley. So it's Ben Kingsley, but he was
Mhm.
knighted. So, when we were on set, we were
Yeah.
told to call him Sir, which he deserves. But, here I am sitting right next to him in the makeup chair. He's to my left, and I'm sitting right here, and I'm going, oh my gosh, that's Ben Kingsley. So that, and he's an amazing actor, so to get
Yeah.
to sit and talk to him was pretty spectacular. I did a TV show with Brooke Shields, worked with her for a week. And,
Yeah.
I grew up watching, loving Brooke Shields. And here I am, talking to her, getting to know her and seeing who she is as a person. I love her to this day. I think she's the most amazing person,
Mhm.
a very genuine person. I got to meet and tap dance. These are names that some people may not recognize, but Gregory Hines,
Yeah.
he's a black man who's probably one of the best tap dancers in the world, very
Yeah.
famous. And he did a movie years ago called Tap, and I got to work on that film and tap dance with Gregory for a week. So meeting Gregory was an amazing thing. Another amazing human being, very down to earth, good man. Died young. I think he was 50. So it was very sad. I just recently worked not too long ago with Louis Anderson on a TV show called
Oh, yeah?
Baskets, and he recently passed. But
Yeah.
again, he's another name that I've known and grew up watching. So to actually get to work with and do a scene with him, I'm just a kid in a candy store to get to meet these
Yeah.
people I've always grown up with. I did a TV show with Kiss, Gene Simmons. When
Yeah.
I was a boy, I had floor-to-ceiling posters of Kiss in my bedroom.
Wow.
And all of a sudden, here I am meeting, talking with, hanging out with Gene Simmons, the guy who was
Cool.
on my poster. And I told him, I said, Gene, man, I gave him the whole story, so we had a great time working together. So it's been fun to meet all these amazing people that I've grown up admiring, liking, being awestruck by. And here I am now working with them. It's exciting. So yeah, there's a lot of
Yeah.
names. I could go on.
Yeah. No, it's amazing. It's amazing. Um, so like a lot of the stuff that we've been talking about, right? So we talked about the production company that you started. We talked about the films that you produced, particularly Healing the Heroes of 9/11, that you basically had 2 months to work on and
Mhm.
somehow pulled it off. Just getting into acting and entertaining in the first place. I imagine that there's been a lot of hustle. There's been a lot of grit. There's been a lot of resiliency and
Absolutely.
things like that. How important would you say that just you strike me as the kind of person who just doesn't quit and doesn't take no for an
Mhm.
answer. How important would you say that that's been to you? And the reason I ask that question is because you're somebody that I look at, and hearing you have these conversations and talk about these things with me, you're somebody who I think that that what you've done and what you're doing, even in terms of what you're willing to do and not willing to do, the fact that you are working in Hollywood and working in the entertainment industry, and at the same time not willing to compromise on values that you have, which a lot of people would be afraid to do, I think, in that kind of a world where they'd say, you know what, like, you got to say yes to everything or you're not going to make it, or whatever the
Yeah.
case may be. But being unwilling to compromise on things that are important to you, and at the same time being able to focus on projects that you're actually passionate about, that you want to do, and all this. I know that there's been a lot of years and a lot of work and a lot of training and everything that's gone into this. But I think that whether we're talking about somebody who's interested in the entertainment industry, or just somebody who just has any kind of a passion or goals in life that they're going after, there's so much resiliency that goes into that. And there's gotta be sort of a spirit within us that says, like, I'm going to go after my dreams. I know there's going to be setbacks. I know there's going to be obstacles, but I'm going to go after it. And so I think that your life and what you've done, and even your personality and just the decisions that you've made through this, can really, really speak volumes to so many people, no matter what, industry or life decisions that we're talking about. So just how important has that been for you in your life to getting you to where you are today? Just that sort of resiliency and attitude that says, like, I'm not going to take no for an answer, and
Mhm.
I'm going to go after what I feel like, whether it's what I feel like I'm called to, or what I'm
Mhm.
passionate about, or whatever.
Yeah, well, you're definitely right on, with the success I have had in life, and there's a lot more success I would like to have and wished I could have
Yeah.
had by now, so I'm there's so much more I still want to accomplish. But, and I tell my wife, I feel like many times with as much as I've accomplished, I haven't reached my goals for what I had for myself. So sometimes I tell my wife, I feel like I haven't done it yet. I haven't accomplished it
Mm,
yet. And
mm,
and yet she says, yeah, but so many people think you're so successful. I'm like, yeah, but I don't.
mm.
So maybe that's part of the thing that drives me, is just because I have my own goals of what I had hoped to do. And, to have some of those things actually not take place, um, can be frustrating, but I've never been one to let a no stop me.
Mhm.
I've never been one to say, okay, I haven't accomplished, I had certain goals I wanted to hit by the time I was 50. Well, now I'm 58, and I haven't hit some of those goals. So, but okay, I'm not done trying, so
Yeah,
I'm going to
yeah.
keep going. And when I've gotten no's, and I've gotten a lot of no's, and in the entertainment business, you hear no, no, no all the time. For every role I got, I probably heard 30 or 40 no's. It's just every actor. That's average. 30 auditions for every role you're cast in. That's the average. If you're a good working actor. For those who aren't, many more roles before they get a yes.
Yeah,
Before they get a
yeah.
yes. But I've created a lot of things by my entire life. If I'm anywhere, performing anywhere, I find a way to get press. Um, whether
Mm,
it's newspaper, TV interviews, I find an angle that they're interested in, so they get me on for promotion. I ended up getting a talk show in the Midwest that aired in 3 states, where I got to interview Debbie Reynolds, which was one of my, Singing in the Rain, one of my favorite actresses from back in the day. Glenn Campbell, I was a huge fan of Glenn. I
mm.
got to interview him twice. Many stars were on my show that I hosted. I got that again because of promoting myself. I'm making opportunities. I never sat there and waited for people to call me. And so, regardless of your career, your hopes, your desires, with whatever it is that you want to accomplish, don't sit and wait for it to come to you. You need to put into effect whatever you need to take the steps to make those things happen, to change your life, reach those goals, make those things happen. And I've just always done that. Again, I haven't reached all of my goals, no matter how hard I've tried yet, but I'm going to keep trying until I do. And there are people, it always impresses me, people who come to this country with no money, immigrants,
Yeah.
and they end up eventually becoming very successful. This country allows you to do whatever you want to do. So when I hear people complaining about their poverty, where they grew up, they're this or that, yeah, they have a very difficult time, much more difficult than I've had to experience. But people of all colors, races, financial backgrounds, and everything else, it's really about the person choosing to work hard and
Yeah.
not let what their circumstances are stop them, but despite their circumstances, push forward. There are people who have no money and become very successful, people with no legs, and
Mm,
look at what they've accomplished, people with no arms. I mean, there's that gentleman, he's got no arms and no legs, who's a Christian, motivational speaker, who's motivated thousands all over the world. Who would have thought he could impact so many people with what
wow.
he was born with? I mean, there are so many circumstances we can all be given that we can say are a negative, but you can work past it, if you work hard. And again, I've been lucky, I've been blessed, but I've been able to accomplish what I have by God's grace.
Mm,
Because number one, He's number one in my faith, in my life.
yeah.
Praying, reading the Bible regularly, going to church, worshiping. Nothing better than worship. I love worshiping God.
Yeah.
Those are all so important. But living your best life, treating people around you good. Social media people rip each other apart because they can hide behind the computer.
Mm.
I've never said anything rude, about people. If I say something, that's negative, it's never an attack. It's just being honest as diplomatically as I can. But I try to avoid that. I think there's just too much negativeness out there. But yeah, people can accomplish whatever they want. They just have to work hard, regardless of their circumstances.
It's so good. It's a good word, man. I was just thinking, there's a story that I love about Pablo Picasso, and I
Mm.
don't know, if this is even real or not, but it's a story that I heard, and either way, it works. This woman saw him in a market or somewhere and ran up to him, Mr. Picasso, can you please draw me a picture? I'm such a big fan. Can you please draw me a picture? And she gave him a piece of paper, and he took the piece of paper and he, took 30 seconds and he did something on the piece of paper and handed it back to her. She said, "Oh, thank you so much." And he said, "That'll be $10,000 or some exorbitant amount of money like that. And she goes, $10,000? She said, "It only took you 30 seconds to draw that." And he said, "No, it took me 30 years to draw that in 30 seconds."
That's
And
exactly
and I
right.
love that. And it's
Good
and
point.
what you're saying is so on point, because we can look at people, particularly in the entertainment industry, whether we're talking about
Hmm.
actors or we're talking about sports figures or whoever we're talking about, and we can look at them and we can make the mistake in our mind to say, "Oh, it must be nice, right? It must be nice to have what they have, to have the fame, to have the money, to have all of that."
Yeah.
And we can think that what they did was an easy process to get there. But we
Yep.
don't recognize, and maybe there are a handful of overnight successes, somebody
Yeah.
that was just in the right place at the right time and it just worked out, and they're just extremely talented, and for whatever
Yeah.
reason it worked out. But that's definitely the exception to the rule, right? For pretty
Yeah.
much anybody
Absolutely.
that you can point to
Hmm.
that have reached that level of fame or success or wealth or whatever, there's a story behind that. And a lot of times it's
Hmm.
a story, like we're talking about, of grit. It's a story of hustle. It's a story of disappointment, of being rejected, of being told no 100 times so you can get that one audition that doesn't even go that well,
Yeah.
just like over and over again, and being willing to grind through that process. And again, just kind of staying true to yourself and continuing to go after your goals. And I think that's so key. We can look at people on these big screens and be like, "Oh, it's so easy for them because they have this and that," but like, you don't know at the end of the day what it actually costs that person to get to where they are now.
Yeah.
And there's no reason why you, in the same situation, whether, again, whatever it is, but going after your dream and your passion, there's no reason why you cannot as well attain to a level of success. But it's not going to happen overnight, and you do have to work and be willing to sacrifice some things and be willing to
Hmm.
go after it until you have it. I love when you were talking there how you said there's certain things I haven't experienced or I haven't attained to yet. I
Hmm.
love the yet, and I love just that tenacity to keep going.
Yeah. Absolutely.
It's cool. Well, finally, if you could, I mean, I know, so for the past few years, I guess, so much of your time and your energy and effort in terms of your work life has gone into producing these films very much related to, again, post-traumatic stress, and helping veterans and first responders and people that have experienced trauma in their past to find freedom. What would you say is kind of on the horizon for you? Is there any particular plan for what's coming next?
So my production company was hired recently, and we're doing another documentary that we've already started at the beginning of the year, and so that's exciting. We're going to release more details about that later, but that's a big project we're working on. And then I've got 3 films in development. One is the Wounded Heroes screenplay. You've got the documentary here that we
Mhm.
released, and we put the other film, the screenplay, on hold. Well, now that this is released, we're going back to Wounded Heroes, the feature film, and
Wow.
we've updated the screenplay, and we're raising money for it now. And I'm working with DDS for Vets, which is a nonprofit organization in Florida that does a lot of great work helping veterans, and they're working with me to raise the money for Wounded Heroes. And it also now features an alternative treatment that gives people their lives back. So it's going to feature a real alternative treatment that is working today to give people their lives back. And so that's exciting, because not only is it going to be an entertaining, um, you know, film that's got a great dramatic story, flashbacks to Iraq, flashback war sequences in Vietnam. It's going to be a very fun film, but it's going to also have the storyline about post-traumatic stress, but we're going to see somebody get their life back using a real life TRP. In this case, TRP is the planned treatment that so that people will be entertained, but also see something that can also help if they're battling post-traumatic stress. So I've got that film in development, and then also 2 other films in development. So we've got 4 projects we're working on right now.
Wow. The first thing that you mentioned, the documentary, is that something that you can discuss, or is that kind of still on the down low as far as
It's
what it's
kind of on
about?
the down low. Yeah,
Okay.
it's going to be another film on 9/11.
Okay.
And it's going to be something that's never been done before, because we've all heard stories of 9/11, Ground Zero, and Pentagon and everything else. And we wanted to, when they reached out to me, they said we want to do something that's different. So we brainstormed for a while, and I came up with some, we all think, great ideas that are going to make this a very unique, uplifting, impactful film. And so we're very excited about it, and we'll have some pretty amazing people that are going to be part of it, being interviewed in it, and it's going to be an uplifting film. It's going to be wonderful.
Yeah. Well, Michael, I really appreciate you, man. Appreciate your time. Thanks for being here, for sharing your heart, and really for just all the work that you've done and that you're doing to really shed light on some issues that are just so incredibly important. And I appreciate you, kind of being on the front lines of the film industry, so to speak, and just taking on this mantle of doing this. And I'm again so appreciative of you, of your time. If you would just share again before we go on just where people can go to find these videos, these films, and
Mhm.
anything else that you'd like to draw some attention to.
So I'll give my personal website, which pretty much has everything. It's michaelgier.com, my first and last name.com. And then woundedheroesdocumentary.com is where you can see Wounded Heroes, and then 220.org, and it's 22zero.org is where you can see
Okay.
Healing the Heroes of 9/11. But everything, again, is on michaelgier.com as well, including my production company, GuyerProductions.com. It's all
Yeah.
on michaelgier.com. So it's a catch-all, I guess. But and if you email on any of those sites, it will get to me if you have a message or anything you want to say, or if you have a question, or if you want to see the films, let me know. And like I said, I'll send you a link to any of them.
That's awesome. Well, I forgot to mention this at the beginning, but shout out to Dr. Janelle Royster for setting this up and making this, helping us have this initial contact. And I'm so appreciative of just being able to connect with you and to get to know you, and to learn about these projects that you're involved in. It's been super eye opening for me personally, and I would just encourage everybody that's watching or listening to this podcast to check those things out and find out more about this world of post-traumatic stress. And yeah, I think if you check it out, you're definitely not going to regret it, and it's going to be eye-opening for you in so many different ways. So well, Michael Gier, ladies and gentlemen, I appreciate you guys for stopping by and checking out this episode. If it blessed you, encouraged you, challenged you, added any kind of value to your life, if you'd consider subscribing, sharing, or leaving a review. I'd also love your comments to hear from you. Any of that kind of stuff would just be amazing and super appreciated. Michael, thank you again, sir.
Hey, thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
All right. Bye, everybody.